Standing beside a pristine mountain lake in my home state of Idaho, I was harnessed into a parasail, anticipating within moments to be airborne. My neighbor and expert boatman, Doug Hadley, had invited my sons and me to go boating that day behind a ski boat, and he just happened to own a parasail. Well, trying to be a good dad, I let my boys go first. But now it was my turn. We'd learned a few things about this process to begin with, and one was the most important. The line that connected the boat to the rider to the parasail had to be very carefully snaked across the beach so that when the boat and the rider were taut, meaning tight, and suddenly he would jam the boat and accelerate fast, suddenly the parasail would expand, the rider would go up, and the line wouldn't get crisscrossed, which is an important detail. So there I was, waiting my turn, anticipating within moments to be probably 100 feet in the air. When bam! All of a sudden, instead of being 100 feet in the air, I was 15 feet underwater. And the water kept going faster and faster and faster. I closed my eyes so my contacts wouldn't get ripped out of my face. In that moment, I knew two things. I knew that I trusted Doug Hadley. He's still the best boater that I know. If he wasn't worried, I wasn't worried. I also knew this, that before I climbed off his boat, went on the beach and got harnessed up, he said, "Bob, if anything happens, get your feet in front of you and keep them there." So desperately, as the water keeps going faster and faster and faster, I'm struggling underneath the water, trying to get my feet in front of me. When suddenly, just as quickly as I was submerged, I was 20 and then 40 and then 80 feet in the air, having an incredible ride, seeing things I'd never seen before. Clarity kept chaos from becoming a catastrophe, and instead was a catalyst for an amazing experience that I'll never forget. Get your feet in front of you and keep them there is something that I'd like you to focus on for these few moments as we explore what one of my dear friends early in my career called the 3 needs for clarity. First, to lead with clarity. Second, to listen for clarity. And third, to live in clarity. First, leading with clarity. There's a lot of things written about leadership, but I can't think of anything that summarizes the role of a leader more clearly than get your feet in front of you and keep them there. Because there's certain things a leader can't delegate. There's a lot they can, but there's a few they can't. They can't delegate vision, direction, or pace. A team cannot run faster than their leader. It's impossible. But when a leader understands this and then brings his team or her team and delegates to them the roles and goals, and they're all aligned, unforgettable things take place. And that clarity creates magic. Point number 2, listen for clarity. About 20 years ago, I was sitting in my office one afternoon when I was running a division of about 250 people, not in healthcare, and 2 supervisors burst into my office screaming at the top of their lungs. Wholly uncharacteristic of them because I knew them both. They'd been working with me and for me for 2 years. I did something very uncharacteristic of me. I said, "Guys, I don't know what's going on, but you do. So sit down and shut up." Desperately, I was wondering, how do I begin to diffuse the situation so they both don't end up fired? And then, as the universe sometimes works, a thought came to my mind. Seek first to understand and then be understood. From Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits. So I heard these words come out of my mouth. "Clay and Dan, you're both going to have a chance to speak, but here are the ground rules. The first person gets to say anything that's on their mind. The other one, You can't explain, you can't justify, you can't question. The only thing you can do is reflect. And then you're going to trade. And it'll be the next person's turn. I refereed that discussion. And within an hour, these two young men worked magic. They were both in tears, begging forgiveness of one another, saying it was so stupid. And they left with a hug. And it never happened again. Clarity prevented conflict from becoming a catastrophe, and instead, it created an experience that none of us ever forgot. It was the catalyst for empathy, for understanding, for ownership and resolution. Third story. I have here on the stage a clear glass jar. In 1870, a young man in the streets of Philadelphia began to sell products in a clear glass jar, horseradish to be exact. At the time, the canning industry in America had just begun, and most things had fillers in them. They weren't food. You can use your imagination for what was in them. He figured if he sold his product in a clear glass jar, people would buy it, and he was right. His name is a household name. And yet his accomplishments are largely forgotten in our day and age. But I'll tell you, he was a manufacturing, marketing, and a management and leadership genius. I even know about him simply because he was a contemporary of my great-grandfather, and they were dear friends. In manufacturing, he was the very first, 20 years before Henry Ford, to use an automated assembly line. In marketing, he understood brand management long before anybody else understood the power of that. And not just nationally, but internationally. But with management and leadership, that was his real powerhouse. He was the very first to have a human resources department in his company, and he employed 2,500 people. The very first to have on-site doctors and dentists. The very first to actually hire women, put them in management positions, and pay them well. And in a day and age when unionization was rampant throughout America, he never even had a unionization effort. His culture won as many awards as his product. It was called the Heinz Way. His name, H.J. Heinz. We know him now by the ketchup bottles that we pass in the grocery store, which, by the way, he branded and patented over 100 years ago. He lived a very clear life, and he lived by a few very, very understandable maxims. One was, the best companies run with heart power. Another he picked up from his mom early in life. It was this: do as much good as you can. Do not live only for yourself. But I think the one that framed his life the most was this. He lived by 3 rules. The first one was to earn all you can honestly. The second was to save all you can prudently. And the third was to give all you can wisely. Half of his fortune was given away by the time he died. And unlike his contemporaries, like Carnegie, who built these massive structures and their name lives forever, Heinz never did that. Most of his contributions could only be found in a church newsletter. Later in life, he said this: those that have perfected the first 2 of these principles but never experienced the third have missed the greatest joy in life. Ironic, a man who lived with such clarity started his career with a clear glass jar. I now take us back to where we began, underwater, 15 feet. The reason that even happened was because I had 3 boys that went ahead of me, and the rope itself had become so muddy that my friend, the driver of the boat, couldn't see it. So his lack of clarity created a huge crisis in my life and chaos. But the clarity he gave me with the instructions allowed me to have an unforgettable experience. Lead with clarity. Listen for clarity. Live in clarity. Simple. Just like keep your feet in front of you. But if we will exercise these things and live them, we'll make such a profound difference in the lives of our clients, our teams, our families, and maybe, just maybe, the mark we make, like H.J. Heinz, will last for generations. Thank you.